You give yourself 3 weeks to write something simple. Somehow, it still isn't finished until the night before it's due. Sound familiar? What if the deadline isn't just a limit? What if it's actually shaping how hard, how long, and how complicated your work becomes? In 1955, a British historian named Cyril Northcote Parkinson noticed something strange happening inside government offices. He wrote it up as a satirical essay for The Economist. Readers laughed until they realized he just described their entire workday. His observation became known as Parkinson's Law. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. Think of it like gas in a jar. Give it a small space, it stays small. Give it a bigger space, it spreads to fill every corner. Pack a small bag, you bring less. Give yourself all day, an email takes all day. The container decides the size. Parkinson wasn't just theorizing, he was staring at real numbers from the British Admiralty, and they didn't add up. Between 1914 and 1928, the number of ships in the Royal Navy fell by 2/3. Fewer ships, fewer sailors, an obvious shrinking operation. Yet during that same period, the number of officials running the Admiralty grew by nearly 6% every single year. Parkinson found 2 forces driving this. First, officials want subordinates to manage, not rivals to compete with. Second, those new subordinates create new work, memos, approvals, reports that only more officials can process. He even wrote a tongue-in-cheek formula predicting staff growth, proving the pattern was almost mathematically reliable. But this isn't just a story about old bureaucracies. The same force is quietly running your Tuesday afternoon. Give yourself a whole week for a task, and your mind invents more steps, more complications, a maze that grows the longer you stare at it. Psychologists point to anxiety. Without urgency, your brain doesn't feel pressure to act, so it waits and waits until the deadline creates the pressure itself. This is why students write 10-page papers in the final 48 hours of a 3-week window. The clock, not the calendar, sparks the work. Parkinson had a second, equally sharp observation, the Law of Triviality, nicknamed bike shedding. A committee will spend an hour debating the color of a bike shed, but rubber stamp a nuclear reactor design in minutes, because everyone understands paint, but few understand reactors. Sound familiar from meetings? Easy, understandable topics soak up the most discussion time, simply because they can. Ever sat through a meeting that should have been a 2-line email? That's Parkinson's Law wearing a name tag. Most calendar apps default to 30 or 60 minutes, so the conversation, no matter how small, expands to use every last one. Here's a twist. Parkinson's Law doesn't just apply to time. It applies to money, too. Expenditure rises to meet income. Get a raise, and somehow your spending quietly rises right along with it, leaving your savings exactly where they started. Studies on lottery winners show the same pattern. Sudden income rarely creates sudden security. Spending simply expands to match it. Governments show this too. Peacetime budgets that should shrink instead balloon, department by department, decade after decade. In tech, it's called feature creep. A simple app quietly grows buttons, menus, and settings nobody asked for. Give a product team unlimited scope, and the roadmap sprouts new branches. Parkinson's Law applied to complexity instead of time. Even the Y2K bug traces back to this. Decades of, we'll fix the date format later, because later felt infinite, until it wasn't. This reframes procrastination entirely. It isn't laziness. It's Parkinson's Law acting on your motivation, holding action back until urgency finally snaps it forward. Parkinson had a phrase for this too. Delay is the deadliest form of denial. The longer the runway, the easier it is to pretend there's no rush. Remote work makes this vivid. An unstructured day at home doesn't just hold your tasks, it invites them to spread out and fill every open hour. Even your phone runs on this principle. An infinite scroll never ends, because attention, like work, expands to fill whatever space it's given. Time, money, meetings, attention, completely different areas, one identical pattern. Anything unconstrained tends to expand until it hits a limit. It explains that strange, familiar feeling of being endlessly busy, yet somehow never quite getting anywhere. So if expansion is the problem, what actually shrinks it back down?
The answer is the same principle, reversed. Shrink the container, and the task inside it shrinks too. Strategy 1. Set an artificial deadline. Even a fake one triggers the same urgency as a real one and gets the work moving sooner. Strategy 2. Timeboxing. Assign a task a fixed block of time and refuse to let it borrow more. The Pomodoro Technique turns this into a habit. 25 focused minutes, one small timer, one task, no expansion allowed. In meetings, try cutting 60 minutes down to 20. Most decisions get made just as well, often faster and far less painfully. With money, automate your savings the moment income arrives, before your spending has any chance to expand and absorb it.
Constraints aren't the enemy of good work. They're often the reason for it. A river moves fastest, clearest, through its narrowest canyon. Looking forward, this law faces a new test. AI tools can generate infinite tasks, infinite options, infinite available time to fill. But the same tools can enforce limits too. Auto-scheduling, focus modes, hard caps, turning infinite potential back into useful boundaries. So remember the reversed law. Shrink the container and you shrink the task. The next time you're handed unlimited time, ask yourself, what would this task look like with half of it? If this changed how you see your own to-do list, subscribe for more ideas that quietly explain how the world and your Tuesday actually works.